Everyone, this is my Dodge Viper buyer's guide. I'll be covering the second generation Dodge Viper, which covers 1996 until 2002. Prices are starting to trend up overall on these cars, some more than others, but as an average, as of 2017, the prices are starting to trend up. If you want to thoroughly research one of these cars before purchasing it, I would recommend checking out my video on issues and problems with this car, as well as a factory paperwork video I did. Some other good resources. There's also the Viper Buyer's Guide book that came out several years ago. It is getting a little hard to find that book, and it is expensive, but it is a great resource. There's also the viperregistry.com. It's a very good website that goes over a lot of the very intricate and specific features and information on this car, everything from the build numbers, VIN locations, the differences year to year, as well as the colors that were available. Of the 7 years of production, there was only about 3 different colors available per year. Red was available for 6 years, blue and white, silver, yellow, and black were available for 2 years. Sapphire blue, steel gray, and graphite metallic were 1 year only colors. I would also recommend, before you purchase a car, getting a Carfax done. It gives usually a pretty good history of the car, as well as a pre-purchase inspection, or PPI is always a good idea. Basically, you can have either a third party or a dealer evaluate the car, and they will give a good general idea on the overall condition of the car, as well as doing a simple Google search can usually yield a pretty good amount of information on the car. And it's always a good idea to maybe post on the forums and talk to Viper owners if they are familiar or know anything about a certain car you may be looking at. Sometimes you can get some really good information on the forums. These cars had very few options that were available. One of the only options that they had were stripes that were available, usually for the GTSs. The stripes were a $3,000 option, and there was usually only one color available for each respective body color. There was the ACR option. You can also check out my video I did on identifying an ACR. There was the Connolly interior that was available from 99 to 2002. That was an interior update. I'll go over that when I'm inside the car. And a dual top group that was RT10 specific. This was a hard top as well as a soft tonneau cover that fit into the trunk. Some special editions worth noting. There were the ACRs available from 99 to 2002. ACRs represented approximately 10 to 20% of total Viper production. ACRs were available on GTSs only. There was the 1998 GT2, also called the GTSR. This was a commemorative car to commemorate their win at Le Mans. The car was white with blue stripes. It had the 18-inch BBS wheels, same as this. A large spoiler on the back. It had interior blue accenting and red racing belts. There was also the 2002 Final Edition, or FE cars, that was available in the GTS only. There was 360 of them made. They were also made to commemorate the Le Mans race cars, and it symbolized the end of the Viper production. All of the Final Edition cars were red with white stripes, and they had red stitching on the steering wheel and the shift knob as well. There was also the Gold Edition, which was a 97 option for the GTS. It was available, a red car that had gold wheels and gold lettering on the outside. There was only a handful of those made. And then there were the one-off raffle cars that were done for the Viper Club of America. There was one Viper Blue GTS ACR made, and there was one RT10 ACR made, as well as some other one-off cars. So those were most of the special edition cars. And for the early second-generation RT10s, they were a mix of first- and second-generation parts. In 96, for the RT10 only, they used the new chassis, the new wheels, and the new interior. And then they used the older first-generation engine, doors with the plastic windows, the old hood, and the car had no airbags. There was only 3 colors that it came in. It was red with yellow wheels. They did white with the thin blue saber-tooth stripes and white wheels, and then there was a black with silver stripes. For 97, they updated the car. The only first-generation part left on the RT10 was the hood. Everything else had been updated, and they did 53 blue with white stripe RT10s to match the GTSs. and I'll show you how to identify a first versus second generation hood. On the second generation hoods, you had this NACA style air inlet, as well as these louvers on both sides. First generation cars did not have these louvers or the inlet. They only had these covers on the hood that people often refer to as speakers. So I'll be taking the car to the garage now, and I'm going to go over all the different features of the car and show you how to identify a stock versus a modified car, and some Viper specific things that you want to look for when purchasing a car. Alright, I got the car out of the garage to give a better view on the car. I'll walk around and show you what the outside of a second generation Viper looks like in stock form. One thing that you will notice that this car has no chrome on it. These cars did not have any sort of chrome from the factory other than the Viper logo on the nose. So a lot of people put a lot of trinkets and chrome accessories on these things. Those are aftermarket. So this is the only chrome on the car. The Viper logo on the front. One thing you'll also notice about this car is that the door panel and various panel gaps are pretty poor on this car. The ones for the doors have a pretty large gap, and the rockers are even bigger. And same thing with some of the hood panels. They're kind of all over the place. Unfortunately, these didn't have the best build quality, so that's not indicative that the car's been apart or been in an accident, but that is pretty normal for these cars. One thing you also want to check on these cars is the chin. These chins were known for getting really scraped up because the car sat so low. So if you're coming up to anything that's sort of low to the ground, like speed bumps, you can get over them. You should just take it slow and at an angle. So a lot of cars do have damage on the chins. You definitely want to inspect that. And most people will ask what these are. Those are headlight levels. So most cars don't have that, and most people are fascinated by it. Also, on the top of the hood, you have these grills. The one on the passenger side is for the inlet for the HVAC system, and this one on this side is just to be symmetrical. A lot of people ask if they're speakers. That's a pretty common question you will get. The hood, as I stated in my other video, these hoods are very expensive. You need to be very careful with these hoods. Also, check the corners of the hoods for damage. A lot of people didn't adjust these hoods correctly, and they would slam them shut, and they'd break the corners off. So you definitely want to check the hood for any sort of damage. Definitely inspect the rocker panels for excessive blistering from the heat. There may be a little bit of blistering in the rocker. I have a tiny bit right here. I have a little bit of fading in this sticker. That's fairly normal, but you want to inspect the paint for any damage from the blistering of the heat. Some cars will suffer from that because of the side exhaust. Also, all Vipers had rear exit exhaust. This one has an aftermarket system put on it, but the regular standard exhaust system just had a stamped steel muffler, and it had stainless steel tips on it that were not polished. This is the stock rear end of the car. These are the stock lighting assemblies. You also have this Viper logo third brake light, GTS specific. RT10s don't have them. Also, the fuel door stock for this car is a polished aluminum. It does not have any Viper logos, or it's not chrome. A lot of guys upgraded these things as well. This is GTS specific. RT10s did not have this. Also, you want to check the VIN plate. I spoke before about getting a Carfax and a pre-purchase inspection. There's your VIN plate halfway up the A-pillar, and I also highly recommend checking that plate also against the sticker on the door frame. Just make sure all the numbers are the same. They should be. If they're not, then something's wrong. All right, wheels for Gen 2. Second generation, there were no wheel options. The 1996 through 1998 came with 17-inch 5-spoke, thin 5-spoke wheels, most of which were polished. A few were painted, and some 97 red GTSs came with yellow wheels. In 1999, they upgraded to an 18-inch, and that was through 2002. It had a wider spoke, and they were all polished. If you went for the ACR model, they upgraded you to these 18-inch BBS painted wheels. So while you're checking the wheels and the condition of the wheels, because these wheels are very expensive and you want to make sure they're in good shape, also check the brakes. These are your stock 13-inch front rotors with the black painted 4-piston fixed calipers. The one thing you specifically want to check on the brakes is the lettering of the word Viper. That lettering should be bright white. If that lettering is faded or has turned yellow, then that means that the car has most likely been erased. The heat saturation is indicative of turning the calipers a yellow color. So that's usually a telltale sign. And on the back, you also have 13-inch rotors, but you have a single cast piston caliper. So these are the stock brakes for the second generation cars. Moving on to the engine. How to open the hood on a second generation Viper. You have to make sure the car is unlocked first. If it's locked, the alarm will go off. There is a lever under here. You pull the lever, and the hood pops to the first position. There's another lever under here you push to the side, and the hood comes up a little bit more. You then have to go around front. Ideally, you want to do this with 2 people. I have to put the camera down because I can't lift it by myself with one hand. And that's how you correctly open the hood by yourself with a second generation. Again, ideally 2 people is the best. This is a stock second generation Viper engine compartment. There are no additional add-ons in this in any way. That's the stock airbox. Stock inlet tubes for the ACR. These are the smooth tubes. They were also standard on the 98 GT2. The regular cars had an accordion style air inlet. These are your stock throttle bodies. They were made by an Italian company, and they're a bare aluminum color. Then this is your manifold. This is not chrome. This is polished aluminum, and these are magnesium and it's polished, but there was no chrome under here from the factory. One thing that I also want to convey to potential owners is that this car is very easy to work on. Don't be intimidated by this car in any way. I've changed every single fluid under here. It's easy, it's not hard. As long as you can get the car off the ground, maintenance is easy, oil changes, everything from spark plugs and fluids. So you don't have to take this car to some exotic dealership or even just a regular Dodge dealer. You can work on this car like any other car. They're very easily accessible. One thing also is the exhaust system. A lot of these cars got aftermarket exhaust systems on them. This is the stock system. 96 and 97 had a cast iron manifold. 98 through 2002 had this tubular style header on it, and they all had the heat shielding on it. Most of the aftermarket systems, they did not put the heat shielding back on. I believe they did not fit. Also, one of the biggest updates for the second generation that a lot of people were waiting for was the anti-lock brake system. This is an ABS car. 2001 and 2002 were the only years that had ABS. How you identify ABS? It came from the factory with a yellow cap. The reservoir faces the passenger compartment, and these lines are coated with a black rubberized coating. The non-ABS cars, which was 92 to 2000, the cap was black. This reservoir faced forward, and these were a bare metal color. They were sort of a silver color because they didn't coat them with anything. Also, this is your jump port if you need to jump start the car, and here's your ground. One thing you notice that you do not see under here, there is no battery. If you need to change the battery on the car, the battery is in the rear wheel well. You have to take this tire off, the wheel off. It is behind this compartment here. It's not hard, but it's a little involved changing the battery of this car. There's a lot of bolts that have to come off, and you have to take that panel off. So you want to try to avoid changing the battery at all costs, i.e. get a battery tender. So if the car's sitting for a while, you definitely want to hook it up to a battery tender so the battery doesn't go dead, because these cars are voltage sensitive. If the battery gets old and has gone through a lot of deep cycles. Also, another hotly debated topic for this engine. All the model years, with the exception of the early RT10s, all had this second generation engine. They did make some minor internal changes on it. From 96 to 99, the engine had a slightly lumpier cam, notice the 708 cam, and it had forged pistons. And then in 2000, they went to a slightly milder cam with cast pistons. There is no power difference between the two engines. Some people say there is a slight unclaimed difference, but it's nothing noticeable. But some people say that these later engines were weaker. From a high performance standpoint, if you want to heavily modify the car, superchargers, turbochargers, or nitrous, the earlier engines are stronger because the forged pistons will hold more stress before they fail. However, these later models, the pistons were lighter, and because they didn't have to allow as much room for thermal expansion with the pistons, you tend to get better cylinder pressure with the cast pistons. So there is a lot of arguments amongst owners on the forum. Some people refer to these as cream puff engines, but both engines are very durable. They're well built. They can take a lot of abuse. If you're just doing simple bolt-ons, there's no issue with this car in any way. However, if you are looking to go for significant power upgrades, the earlier engines are recommended. So I'll start to look inside the car now. As you're getting in the car, one thing you definitely want to check is the door for the door sag. I mentioned that in my other video about problems with the car. The door should close with minimal effort. You know, it doesn't take much to close these doors if they're properly adjusted. Also check the weather stripping. There might be a little bit of wear just because the door, even when it's adjusted perfectly, kind of drags a tiny bit, but there shouldn't be excessive wear on the doors. Also, when you're getting in the car, this car has quite a bit of adjustability on it. There is a knob down here to adjust the position of the pedals. You can move them back or forth. They have a total of about 4 inches of movement. You can also adjust the steering wheel, tilt up and down. So there is a fair amount of adjustability in this car. Also, if you're checking the car yourself, it's a good idea if you have a code scanner. The OBD2 connection port is right there. So if you have a code scanner, I'd recommend hooking it up and taking a look to see if there's any codes in the car. All right. This car is completely stock on the inside. This is a factory correct second generation interior. One thing you notice you do not see on the inside, again, no chrome. A lot of people went crazy on the interiors and put all kinds of chrome bits inside. There is no chrome in this car. You have certain polish features. You have these silver rings around the gauges. So, but that was silver again. That wasn't chrome. The door handles, they were a polished color as well. This is the stock radio. The car came from the factory with an Alpine unit, single CD changer. These are also the stock climate controls. A lot of people put chrome climate control knobs on them as well. This was the only transmission available for this car. It was the Tremec T56 6-speed manual transmission. It's known for being a very well-built, super strong transmission. There were no automatics, paddle shifters, or any other transmission available for the second generation Viper. One also thing to note about this transmission, it's a little bit notchy if the car is cold and it's cold outside. That's a traditional characteristic of Tremec transmissions. They pretty much all do it. So if you're test driving a car and the car is cold and it's cold outside, usually second gear especially will tend to be a little notchy. Once the car warms up, it should smooth right out. But that is a characteristic from Tremec. The only real update this interior got was in '99. All interiors got power mirrors. They got the boomerang style door handles. The shifter and the e-brake were slightly revised. This shift knob was changed. This entire piece used to be leather. Now it has a ball with the exposed shaft on it. And then it has this piece with this polished look to it as well. Also in '99, they introduced what they called the Cognic Connolly interior. What that was, instead of the interior being all black, the seats, the carpeting, the center transmission tunnel, and about halfway up the doors, along with the rim of the steering wheel and the shift knob, were changed to a light tan. It was their way of kind of sprucing up the interior and kind of making it a little bit more appealing, especially to some of the more exotic car market people they were trying to entice with the car. Another thing that a lot of people forget to do when checking really any car, but especially a car that a lot of people modified, you want to take the key, put it in the ignition, and turn the ignition on, but do not start the car. All your warning lights should come on, specifically your check engine light, your fuel pressure light, your ABS light if it's an ABS car, just to make sure that the bulbs are working. If there's a lot of problems with the car that people can't get the codes to go away, they may disconnect the bulbs to try to trick you. So see if that goes on. Make sure all the bulbs work, and then start the engine. The bulbs may come back on for a second, but they all go out. That means that the system is working correctly and that everything is working as well as the bulbs themselves. Make sure that the car idles correctly. Definitely check your gauges while the car is running. When you're out on a test drive, monitor your engine temperature gauge. Usually the car should go just past the 3rd hash mark and come back. These cars can overheat if they are not maintained well. Also, your oil pressure. Your oil pressure should be in the area of about 50 to 60 pounds for a solid engine. Make sure your fuel gauge works and make sure your voltage is good as well. As with any car, you want to do a thorough test drive and just listen for any sort of issues or knocks or anything specific that the car may have wrong with it. These cars aren't really known for having any specific engine problems, but any car that's driven aggressively for an extended period of time can experience issues. All right, the trunk release from '99, they added this release on the side for the GTSs. There is quite a bit of room in here. The only thing that was stored back here from the factory was the cover for the spare tire, and then that's the factory amplifier. There was nothing else back here other than a couple of speakers, so there is quite a bit of room back here. Also, if the electronics fail in this car, because the doors are electronically controlled in this car, the proper way to open the door, if the electronics fail for whatever reason, put the key in here, turn it, the glass will open up. You have to reach past the pillar, and on the inside of the door, all right, I cheated, is the emergency release. So you pull this release and the door mechanically opens. So if for any reason you can't get in the car, that's what you have to do to get it if the doors won't open electronically. If the car is locked, the alarm will go off. How you disable the alarm so you can start the car is in the center glove box, you see that keyhole. That will disable the alarm system so the car can be started again normally. So this is a pretty good overview of the things you really want to look for when looking at a 2nd generation Viper. Obviously, all the things that apply to every other car, you know, just general damage throughout the car, damage to the wheels, tire condition. You would look at that with every car, but I wanted to go over the things that are Viper specific that some people will encounter. So I hope you enjoyed. Any other questions? Put them in the comments. Thanks for watching.